Hello everybody, this is Paige from Mosaic Moments, and today I am doing a demo on these stitch frame dies. So this set that I'm going to use today has the 5x5 stitch frame plus this 3x3 stitch frame size. There's also this die which creates 4 1x1 inch stitch dies. And there's this border stitch die, which this is probably the most complicated one in the set, believe it or not, but I'll be showing you how to use it later on in the video. And just so you know, there is a second set that has a 4x4 and 2x2 stitch frames. Alright, so now that you've been introduced to the dies, let's get started with the demo. So to create these stitch frames, you will of course need a die machine. I am using the Sizzix Foldaway Big Shot, and I'm actually using the magnetic plate today for my base plate. So once you have the sandwich in for your machine, you will lay the die in. This is the 5x5 sized frame here. And next I'm putting a piece of cardstock on top, or you can use pattern paper, and you want to make sure it's larger than your die so that way you don't accidentally cut your die too short or something. And of course you can roll it through the machine. Just keep in mind this is a very big die, and for me it was really tight and harder to get through. And as you can see, it's a pretty easy die to use. It's kind of one and done. In one cut you have your whole frame. Next I'm going to show you how I cut with a photo. And what I like about the stitch frame is it actually has a pretty big space there. It's not too large for 4x6 photos, so you can cut your 4x6 photos with it. And because that square is such a big space, you actually get quite a bit of the photo in that frame. So this is a great size if you have portraits or a group of people like I have here. So this is a great die if you have larger subjects that you can't cut down or you can't crop to a smaller shape. Alright, so take your time here to place the die on your photograph the way you would like it to be cropped, and I do recommend using washi tape just like I placed here, so that way your photo doesn't shift around and becomes crooked when you put it through the machine. Alright, so once you roll it through, you just need that middle piece and the rest of the photo can be discarded. And there you go, there's just one photograph that fits perfectly within the frame. Next, I'm going to cut with this 3x3 die, which is pretty much the same directions as the 5x5 one. In the end, you should have a cute little frame like this that have stitches going around the edges. Next, I'm going to cut my photograph here. So the middle of this die is much smaller than the 5x5, but it still can work for portraits if the people are far away or they're far away enough like this one where you could still get a nice headshot in there. Alright, so I'm also using washi tape for this die because I don't want it to slip around, and it kind of annoys me when the photo looks crooked when you're done too, so we don't want that, right? Alright, so that was pretty simple. You just cut the middle and you're done. Now I'm going to show you how I glue down the frame pieces. It's pretty easy. This is my Re-positionable glue. It's the Herma Dotto Dispenser. I've of course talked about in my other videos how much I like this glue. It's great. Alright, so it's pretty simple. You glue the back and line it up on the grid paper. Be sure that the lines on the top and left side are completely covered. If they're not covered, it's a pretty good indication that your die cut was placed on the grid crooked. As you can see, I'm just placing the glue along each of the corners here, and if needed, you can always add more if it's not getting stuck down to the grid paper enough. And next, I'm taking my time and placing it along the grid lines carefully, and remember to make sure they're covered up. And next, you get to add in your photos, which is super easy. You just need to glue on the back and then place them right in the middle, and they should fit in perfectly. It actually looks really nice. I really like the stitch frame dies. It's really easy to use, and it's just another way to decorate your page and frame your photographs on your page. So anyway, I'm going to show you real quick here. Hopefully you can see the little stitch markings that go around the frames, so that's what you should get when you're at home. All right, so now I'm going to show you the 3x3 frame here. And obviously it depends on what color you use. That plum paper, you can't see the stitching as well, and I can really see the stitching through the video anyway on this green paper. So you want to keep the color in mind when you're using these frame dies. If you want those stitch frames to pop out more, you can always stick a piece of cardstock behind it. Here I have white. So it probably depends on what kind of color you use. If you have a light colored frame, you may want to use a darker color. Here I have kind of dark colored frames, so a light color such as white will help it pop through. All right, I'm going to show it close up again. So you should see the white coming through behind those stitch markings. So that's just one idea. I'm not going to keep the white paper behind mine today, but I just wanted to show you that trick, that if you wanted those stitch little markings to come through, you can always put a piece of cardstock behind your frame. Another trick you can do with the stitch frames is put thread through them. That's what I did here, and it's really nice if you want to have your page appear as if you sewed the frames on your grid paper. And so what I did is I took some thread, and I'm using a very fine beading needle. It's a good size. It doesn't really distort these little stitch markings. You could put a thicker needle through, but just so you know, it might distort them a little bit. It might put a kind of a bigger hole in them, which is what I did earlier. And basically I start with one of the corners and just thread through every single hole here. And of course, if you wanted to, maybe you could skip to every other one or every few if you don't want to put threading in that many holes. So through every hole, I start by going underneath the die and putting the thread through the top and then loop it through. And you can see here I'm going through at the bottom. I'm taking the needle and stretching it out and then poking it back through so I get that loop on the top. And then I'm going to keep going. So basically you repeat these same steps throughout the entire frame. All right, so if you're up for the adventure, this is a fun thing to do. It did take me a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and thread this one. I'll be right back. All right, so now my threading's done. And as you can see, it fills up the whole frame and it looks really good. I like how the white threading really helps that frame to pop a bit more. So, and again, it's kind of has a nice whole handmade look. I mean, we run the die to the machine, but that kind of gives it an element of handmade touch, right? All right, and again, I just put the same glue in the back. If the threading's too thick, you can always use a more permanent glue that may stick down better. But I found that my re-positionable glue I'm using seems to be doing the job really well too. So it just depends on what glue you're using. But I know there's times when I need something a little extra sticky to make sure my scrapbook elements stay down much better. All right. So again, once you're done, whether you thread them or not, you of course stick them right on the grid paper and make sure it's aligned properly. So make sure those top and left lines are completely covered. And of course, the next step is to place your photos on. And same as before, you just simply need to glue the back of each one, and then you can stick them right in the center of the frame. So easy to use. So far, I am loving this stitch frame look. Really quick, I'm going to cut with the die that makes the 4 1x1 inch stitch frames here. Again, same directions as before. You just roll it through the machine. And then, of course, in the end, you get 4 little squares here with those stitch markings. So this is a great little decoration for any layout you do. And right here, I'm using the Xyron Create-a-Sticker machine. It's great for these small little dies, especially if you have intricate ones, and to get the glue down really well. All right, so after I get it through the machine and rub it down, I can, of course, stick it on the grid paper. because it basically becomes stickers that you can easily glue down. And just like before, you want to take your time and make sure that these little squares are placed on the grid paper correctly. These little one squares actually can, I feel like in comparison to the bigger die cuts, they actually can look crooked on the grid a little bit easier. So mainly, you know what's nice about the repositionable glue is you can pick it up and realign it again. All right, here's the whole page so far. I'm going to place some embellishments on that page later, but for now I'm going to be working on my second layout. So yes, I have a 2-page layout today, which is always really fun to do whenever I can. And I have my 2 3x3 stitch frames here, and I'm going to glue my photos down the middle, so super easy. You guys already know how to do that, right? All right, so next I'm going to show you how to use this stitch border die. It's not quite as straightforward as you might think when you originally get it. So first I'm going to show you how it cuts. If you did this before watching this video, you might be slightly confused. So I'm just going to show you what happens. All right. So you can see here that on the longer sides it cut through the paper, but on the ends it's still attached to that cardstock. And there's a reason for that. This die is meant to create various sizes of borders. Now, if you wanted to keep it to the 1x5, I suppose you could use a pair of scissors and just cut off the ends where the creases are. But you can use this die to actually make a really long border, which I'm going to show you in a moment. But for now, I'm going to start out with a shorter border, which I recommend if you're using this die for the first time, just to try it out. So this is the 1x4 die from set D in the basic bundle. So I took my plates off the die machine here since it's easiest, and I do have the magnetic plate to keep that die down. So what you want to do is there's these 2 blades on the edges here, and you want to fit your die cut in between those edges. And you want to make sure that you can see on the left side here that my piece of paper is, well, it's going to be lined up with the die. So make sure one of the edges is lined up with the edge of the die, and you want to make sure that the die is sitting in between the 2 blades on the edges as best you can. And then you definitely want to use a piece of washi tape or whatever kind of tape you use to stick down your paper on the die. And of course, once you're done, you can place your cutting plate on top and then roll it through the machine. All right. So again, might be a little bit tricky when you first use it, so I definitely might practice a couple times on some leftover cardstock. All right, this washi tape is really stubborn. It really, I think, gets stuck in those little stitch markings, so just so you know. And so now it's done. So what I recommend is cutting with the basic dies first, the size, well, that's a 1-inch size you want to use, and then you cut again with the stitch border so you could get those stitch markings. All right, now I'm going to be cutting a 1x10 long piece. So there is not a die that's this long, so I do need to hand cut it. This blue mat is our Mosaic Moments cutting mat, and there's a special grid on the back that basically has the measurements figured out for you. It's really handy, so right now I'm lining it up and cutting it on the 10, and then I'm going to turn it and cut it on that 1. So instead of trying to figure out the exact measurements, again, this back grid is pretty much got that figured out for you. But if you want to learn more about our hand cutting mat, I will link to a video up on the right here because some of you may not be very familiar with it. So definitely go check that out, and that will give you more directions on how to use this mat. So after you cut your strip, you're going to go back to the stitch border die, and you're going to line up the very edge of the border to the very edge of the die again on the left side. And again, you're going to place this strip so it's right in between those 2 cutting blades. You want to make sure it's right in the middle. And it's very important for you to use washi tape. There's no room on the die itself to place the tape on, but I have the tape overlapped between the paper and the tapes going over onto the cutting plate as well. But I have 2 pieces of tape on, so it should stay on there. The paper anyway should stay on the die pretty securely. Alright, so you roll it through the machine, and as you can see, the die only cut half of the border. So in a moment I'm going to show you how you get it cut on the rest of the border. So right now I'm just taking off any frayed edges off my strip here. Alright, and just so you are aware, in the middle here it makes a little crease. So I just wanted you guys to be aware of that's pretty normal. Alright, so since we have half done, we of course need to put the stitches on the other half. So here's the die again. So this time you're going to look at the stitches here, that very end stitch that lines up with the center. And basically you're going to line it up pretty much where you think is right next to that left side of the edge of the die there. So I hope that all makes sense. If not, you can ask a question below. But basically you're getting that stitch, little stitch right next to the die. And in this case, the other end on the right side should really line up near the edge of the die as well. But some of you may have a border that's a little shorter, and that won't line up to that edge. Alright, so once you have that, you cut it through again. So this time, both sides should be done. Alright, have a little frayed edge there, which happens sometimes, and you will get that washi tape stuck on the back. And just so you know, with the little stitches there, it takes a little bit to get it unstuck. But basically what you should have in the end is a whole border with those 2 stitched lines. So that is what's great about the border die, is you can pretty much cut any size strip you want or create a long strip with the stitched edges. Alright, so this is the 1x4 border we did earlier. So that was a pretty easy one. So again, I recommend starting with a shorter size when you're first using this die. And next I'm gluing down the back of the long 1x10 strip, and I'm going to line it up on the grid paper as well. Alright. So carefully line it up as best you can on the grid. Alright, if you look at my border here, it didn't cut fully straight. The stitches are a little bit off and there's that crease in the middle. So an easy fix is to place an embellishment on top. Here I just have a sticker, and that's a great way to cover up any flaws on your stitch border. Alright, so the 1x4 stitch up here, I'm actually using it to place a title. It's a great spot to add any journaling. You can add the year, whatever is great for your layout. Alright, and then I like these little 1-inch squares for adding the year. So you could use the number dies we have here. I'm just using these number stickers that I found I have a sticker set that I really wanted to use for this layout. So either way, these are great spots for adding little numbers or letters. And then last, I felt like these frames needed a little something, so I decided to add some stickers here. In case you're wondering, these are from Basic Gray, which is no longer selling scrapbook supplies from what I know, which is too bad, but I know a lot of you may ask where I got these from, and I'm letting you know you're not going to probably find it. These are actually really old stickers. Alright, and I'm putting this in the middle just to add a little bit of color and some interest on this page. So that's what's nice, especially about those 5x5 frame dies, is it's great. They're so big that you can add some fun embellishments to them. Alright, so this is my 2-page spread. If you look on the left, I did add a little border within that stitch frame to add some color and some interest to the layout. So we have reached the end of today's demo. I hope you enjoyed learning about the stitch frame dies. They are really fun and pretty easy to use, and it's a great die for decorating your layouts. Alright, if you have any questions about anything you saw today, let me know in the comments below. So please like this video if you enjoyed it, and also don't forget to subscribe so you can be updated on future demos. We don't want you to miss out. Alright, I hope you have fun scrapping at home, and I'll see you next time.